He's one of my favorite people that I've gotten a chance to meet in this business. I love chatting with him, and certainly these are interesting times for the city of Las Vegas and the Las Vegas Raiders and everything about it. He is the managing editor of Eisen. He is the legendary Brent Musburger. How are you, Brent?
Fine, Rich, under the circumstances, and I know you and I and everybody on your show wishes nothing but the best, especially for our medical personnel who are working around the clock to treat victims of this horrible virus. And but the one thing I did notice today, and I know there was controversy about the NFL going with the date to start the season and have the talk about free agency. I thought it was a good distraction. I thought it was needed. I know that, and I'm speaking personally.
Yep.
I really enjoyed going over and listening to the shows talk about where will Tom Brady wind up, and on and on. It was because, I think you can lock yourself up with the tragedies for just so long. We're all addicted to social media, all of us. I think there's no question about that. And we pick up our phone and immediately we go to see what the latest bulletins are, and they're depressing. And I thought the NFL offered us an escape today. And obviously, it's very disappointing for the city of Las Vegas to lose the upcoming draft. But there will be other drafts down the road that will come to Las Vegas. But now we can talk about the draft because the NFL is going to hold it the last week of April. And obviously, as you know, they can do that on a teleconference, and you can wire up certain places for the NFL Network, and ESPN will do the same. So at least we have, because talking about the NFL offers hope, because their season doesn't start until the first week of September. So I know, and I'm really speaking personally.
Right.
I enjoyed the talk very, very much, and like everybody else, and yourself included, we're all interested in where Tom Brady is going to wind up, and it, we can't do too much. We're kind of in quarantine, locked up, staying away from our usual hangouts, and it offered me a good escape.
Well, before we can escape together down some of those questions about the NFL and about the Tom Brady watch and whether the Raiders are in on it, I do want to, however, hit what is going on in your town there and what it looks like and what the lack of sports means for the community there. Brent, I want to give you the floor and talk about people who are affected and what we should know about in your estimation.
Well, full disclosure now, I drove out of Las Vegas and I'm up at our place in Montana with the family. But I have spoken to people who are on the scene. Derek Stevens, who owns several casinos downtown and is building the new one on Fremont Street, Circa, and is a huge sports fan. He was the first to alert me to the fact that the Strip was virtually deserted. And following that, about 24 hours later, of course, MGM and Wynn both announced that they were shutting down their casinos for the time being. Now, when MGM shuts down, Rich, that involves 20 separate casinos. They also own the Bellagio, the Mirage, and you can go on and on with the list, including 3 casinos right there around the T-Mobile Center where the Vegas Golden Knights were playing, and Mandalay Bay, which is right across from Interstate 15 from where Allegiant Stadium is being built. Now, work continues on Allegiant Stadium, and much construction outside, of course, keeps the workers a little bit away from each other. There's not collection of workers, but as they get closer and closer, they're putting on the roof, and it's a permanent roof. It's not retractable. When they do that, then, of course, there will be a cluster of workers on the inside. Now, everybody around the Raiders keeping their fingers crossed that construction will not slow down. And on August 22nd, which is a Saturday, Garth Brooks is due to have a concert in Allegiant Stadium. Whether or not there will be a preseason game or whether or not UNLV is able to play California, which is a game on the schedule before that, none of us really know. The first date that has been scheduled, and again, it's for the time being, when you everything that's going on, is August 22nd, and they hope they can get it done. Now, Derek Stevens told me that downtown, and of course these are issues which caused New York, Illinois, Ohio to close down their restaurants and their bars. There were large crowds gathering around the casinos on Fremont Street. Now, of course, in view of the fact that the CDC wants clusters of 50 people broken up and basically to stay apart and don't socialize as much, they feel that that's one of the weapons in fighting this horrible virus. I would guess that the crowds down there will start to fade away. Obviously, it's going to be an enormous hit on the city of Las Vegas, and I feel so badly, as everyone else does, for the part-time workers and those who are being laid off. I saw that Wynn was trying to keep on as many employees as they could. Meanwhile, MGM has already started announcing layoffs, and of course, they're much bigger with all the properties that they have. The local casinos, such as Stations, the South Point, where the VSiN studio is, owned by Michael Gaughan, they are still open. Restaurants are still open, but the crowds are way, way down. And, of course, the casinos depend on large crowds. Conventions have been canceled, most of them. None of the conventioneers will be coming to Las Vegas, and we don't know when that will get repaired and restored. But it's an example of the financial hit that the entire country is going to take as a result of this. You can feel for the airline industry and their employees, certainly the cruise ship industry. Anybody involved in travel or leisure activities is suffering an enormous financial hit. But in the long run, if what we know is accurate with regarding this virus, and we should stay away from large crowds, and we will come out of it. Now, I think, and this is personal opinion, I think the earliest we can count on any kind of restoration of activities is Memorial Day. I had originally hoped it was going to be the end of April, but I'm seeing signs that that's not going to be the case. And obviously, the industries in Las Vegas where I live, they're dependent on tourism and tourists and conventions coming in and the excitement generated by the new stadium, Allegiant Stadium, where the Las Vegas Raiders will play. But there is hope that we're going to have an entire NFL season. And what you have going forward for you is you have hope that there's something down the road. And none of us, you don't give up on something like this. You listen to the good advice that the experts have. You go on about your business because life eventually has to go on. As far as the sports betting industry is concerned, you and I have talked about this before.
Yes, Brent.
Football reigns. There's no question about it. Nothing else is even close to it. And so obviously this optimism going through free agency, the draft, and then thinking about, I think opening day is set for around September 6th in Kansas City, because I noticed that the Royals have canceled their game that night and have gone to a doubleheader on Tuesday, which obviously means that MLB and NFL officials have been talking about when the opening game is going to be held for the Super Bowl champs. But that gives us a little hope to look down the future and things. Yes, Las Vegas, the situation is bleak for VSiN, but we hope to stay healthy, and the country hopes to come out of this. But it's going to be some tough times. I think we all know that.
No doubt, Brent. Brent Musburger here on the Rich Eisen Show. Well put, as always. So let's stroll down, I guess, the fun escapist wormhole for a few more minutes here. In your estimation, the starting quarterback for the Las Vegas Raiders in 2020 would be who?
I'll say Derek Carr, only because I like him so much as a young man.
Right.
And I get the chatter. I understand it. The Raiders don't have to sell tickets. And so whereas the Chargers do have to sell tickets, you and I both know in Los Angeles they're the second team. I always thought that Tom Brady made more sense with the Chargers than the Raiders, Rich. Because of that, I would not be surprised if the Raiders don't draft a quarterback at some point in the upcoming draft, someone to come in underneath Derek Carr and work there. I went back and looked, Rich, at some of the teams that had changed cities. Most recent, I guess, would be the Rams. Well, no, the Chargers that. But the Rams going into from St. Louis into Los Angeles, very difficult first year. And I think it's going to be a very difficult year for the Raiders. You can just imagine what this has done to all those folks that have to move logistically.
Right.
They're finishing up new offices. You've got to have moving company. Now you've been slowed down by this buying of houses. But at any rate, I would make Derek Carr the favorite to open as John Gruden's quarterback in year 3 of his tenure as head coach.
So do you think the Raiders are maybe kicking the tires on Tom, communicating with him in any way, shape, or form, or that's just not really happening based on your potential knowledge in this?
I would think they would kick the tires. I have very limited knowledge. I am aware of where they're seriously looking at free agents, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And my list did not include Brady. Now, they might not want to include me or somebody else in that. I understand that. But it appears in the list I went through, which is sort of interesting, because it did include one offensive player, Kenyon Drake, who was franchised today early by Arizona. And, of course, the reason why is that the Cardinals traded David Johnson a short time after that and acquired DeAndre Hopkins from Houston.
What'd you think?
Was the most surprising.
Yeah, I was about to say, what'd you think of that trade, Brent? What'd you think of that one?
Well, I'm a big fan of DeAndre Hopkins, okay? So in the short term, I give the Cardinals a big grade on that. Give me Kyler Murray, one of the great ball catchers that I've been around in the league. And then when he played at Clemson, also covered him down there. Now, you have to say, hold on about Houston because they've still got a couple of draft choices down the road, and let's see what they do with the additional second round. David Johnson, to me, Rich, has not played as well, and I think you're as well aware of this as I am, since the injury. And Kenyon Drake was picked up by the Cardinals from Miami and was very, very good as a running back. And obviously, the Raiders have Jacobs as their star and starter, but Drake would have given them a little bit of depth back there at position, along with Jalen Richard as the third down pass blocking specialist. So I was surprised, to tell you the truth, when that news broke. I think that's the biggest development of the day, and I think it gives the Cardinals a stand. You put him with Fitzgerald, who's in probably the final year of a Hall of Fame career, can work underneath, and DeAndre can work a little bit deeper. Those are good weapons, and of course the Cardinals are in my mind, the toughest division of them all, and that's the NFC West right now.
Brent Musburger, a few minutes left with Brent here on the Rich Eisen Show. If there's any city that you know many cities in this great country very well. Chicago's definitely one of them, and report is that Teddy Bridgewater might be on the way there. How do you think that plays out if Teddy Bridgewater winds up in Chicago, Brent?
I'm a huge fan of Teddy Bridgewater. Wherever he goes, I think he's going to be a success. Mitchell Trubisky was an overreach when they traded up to take him down. They took him ahead of, a couple of great prospects as quarterbacks, including Patrick Mahomes.
Mm-hmm.
So Mitchell, he had not played enough at North Carolina, Rich, really. Not taken enough snaps. I was always wondering about that because I'd covered colleges and he wasn't a discussed quarterback. When you went around the country, people didn't openly talk about him. I'm sure he's a fine young man. Not trying to say anything negative about him as an individual. And if you go back to that one playoff game, he brought the Bears down, and then it was a field goal, the double clanger that cost him moving on in the playoffs. So, but I'm not surprised. But to go back to Bridgewater, to be able to come back from that horrendous injury, the way he's handled himself. And then I thought one of the best streaks in the league last year was when he stepped in for the injured Drew Brees and led the Saints to 5 consecutive wins. I thought that was one of the great quarterbacking performances of the season. So I wish Teddy nothing but the best. Wherever he goes, I think he'll be successful.
All right, Brent, I wanted to reach out because obviously this is significant for so many communities. Las Vegas was first on my mind, knowing that the draft might not happen, and then that was the case today with the league saying that they're going to run it out of, I'm assuming, New York City, and it'll still be televised by my network and ESPN. And I thought of you, and I just think of you because you're a treasure, man, and I hope you're taking care of yourself. And it seems like you're holed up there in Montana, and I'm thrilled to hear that.
Yeah, obviously great to be surrounded by family and everybody up here in Montana. But I wish the same for you and your entire staff and all your great viewers and listeners. And but the one thing I want to have a little lighter note. I want to know, when you ran the 40 at Indy this year, were you a tick slower than the previous year? I was
a tick faster. However, However, George Kittle came to time me from the 49ers, a wonderful guy. He and his wife donated to St. Jude. He may have given me a gracious flick of the finger. He may or may not have. I don't know. But I'm going to take that 5.97 and literally and figuratively run with it, Brent.
All right, my man. Best to you and the family.
Right back at you. Thanks for the call, Brent. That's Brent Musburger, the great Brent Musburger.